What if I told you there's a $200 tablet that gives you a 120 Hz display, 2K resolution, 4G connectivity, and expandable storage? Sounds too good for the price, right? But there's a catch. So, is the Redmi Pad 2 actually the budget tablet everyone should be buying? Or is the hype hiding some serious compromises? Let's find out. What do you get for $200? So, what exactly are you getting for that $200? The Redmi Pad 2 comes with a compact 9.7-inch display, making it much easier to hold than those larger 11-inch tablets. And honestly, the screen is one of the biggest reasons this tablet stands out. You get a sharp 2K IPS LCD panel with a 120 Hz refresh rate, so scrolling through websites, apps, and photos feels noticeably smoother than you'd expect at this price. Under the hood, there's a Snapdragon 6 Gen 2, which is built for everyday tasks like browsing, streaming, taking notes, checking email, and some lighter gaming. It's definitely not a performance monster, but that's not really what this tablet is trying to be. You also get Android 16, micro SD support for up to 2 terabytes of additional storage, and if you choose the 4G model, you can add a SIM for mobile data, GPS, and even VoLTE calls. So for under $200, this isn't just a basic media tablet, it's a surprisingly flexible little machine. The feature that changes everything. But there's one feature that really makes the Redmi Pad 2 stand out from the crowd, and it's the display. At this price, you usually expect a basic 60 Hz panel, but Redmi gives you a 120 Hz refresh rate here. That means scrolling through websites, switching between apps, and swiping through photos feels much smoother and more responsive. And it's not just about speed. The 2K resolution keeps text sharp and videos looking clean, while the IPS LCD panel still delivers solid colors and viewing angles without pushing the price into premium territory. For a tablet costing around $200, getting a sharp 2K screen with 120 Hz is a pretty big deal. It's the kind of feature you normally notice on much more expensive tablets, and it may be the biggest reason this little Redmi feels more premium than its price suggests. 9.7 inches versus 11 inches. Which one? Now here's where things get a little confusing, because Redmi actually has 2 versions of the Pad 2. The 9.7-inch model is the smaller and lighter option, while the original Redmi Pad 2 gives you a much larger 11-inch display. The 11-inch model wins if your priority is battery life and a bigger entertainment screen. It packs a huge 9,000 mAh battery, quad speakers, and a 2.5K 90 Hz display, making it better suited for movies, gaming, and long sessions on the couch. It also gives you higher memory configurations, including up to 8 GB of RAM. But the 9.7-inch model is all about portability. It drops to a 7,600 mAh battery, but you get the faster 120 Hz refresh rate, a 2K display, and a much lighter body. The 4G version also uses a Snapdragon 6 S4G Gen 2 chip and weighs around 406 grams, compared with roughly 510 grams for the 11-inch model. So if you want a tablet that disappears into a bag and feels comfortable in one hand, I'd go 9.7. But if you want the better all-around media tablet with more battery, bigger speakers, and more RAM options, the 11-inch version is the smarter choice. Redmi Pad 2 versus iPad. Now let's put the Redmi Pad 2 up against the iPad 9th generation, because this is where the decision gets interesting. On raw performance, the iPad still has the advantage. Apple's A13 Bionic is more powerful than the Snapdragon 6 S4G Gen 2 inside the Redmi, and iPadOS also has a stronger selection of tablet-optimized apps. The iPad 9th Gen was introduced in 2021, but it still has plenty of life left in Apple's software ecosystem. But the Redmi fights back with the display. Its 9.7-inch panel runs at 120 Hz with 2048 by 1280 resolution, while the iPad uses a 10.2-inch 2160 by 1620 display at 60 Hz. So while the iPad has a slightly larger screen and higher pixel density, the Redmi feels noticeably smoother when scrolling and navigating. Then there's flexibility. The Redmi gives you USB-C and micro SD expansion, with storage expandable up to 2 TB, while the iPad sticks with Apple's Lightning connector and fixed internal storage options. The Redmi 9.7 can also come with 4G, GPS, and cellular connectivity, making it much more useful when you're away from Wi-Fi. So if you're already deep into the Apple ecosystem, the iPad is still the safer choice. But if you're starting fresh and want a newer, compact tablet with a smoother 120 Hz display, expandable storage, USB-C, and optional 4G, the Redmi Pad 2 makes a surprisingly strong case. Redmi versus Lenovo. Then there's the Lenovo Idea Tab, and this is probably the closest competitor to the Redmi Pad 2. The Lenovo comes with a Dimensity 6300 chip, and in the 8GB RAM configuration, it has a clear advantage for multitasking. You can keep more apps open, switch between them more comfortably, and it has 256 GB of built-in storage, compared with the more limited 4GB RAM option on the 9.7-inch Redmi. Lenovo also gives you a larger 11-inch display, 4 speakers with Dolby Atmos, and 20-watt charging. So if your priority is performance, multitasking, and getting more hardware in the box, the Idea Tab is seriously tempting. But the Redmi fights back with portability and that 120 Hz display. The 9.7-inch model weighs around 406 grams, making it much easier to hold for long reading sessions or carry around all day, while its 120 Hz 2K panel is smoother than the Lenovo's 90 Hz screen. So personally, if I wanted maximum performance and RAM, I'd lean toward the Lenovo. But if I wanted a smaller tablet that's easier to carry, has a smoother display, and can even give me 4G connectivity, the Redmi Pad 2 makes more sense. It really comes down to whether you want more power or more portability. The problems nobody talks about. Of course, a $200 tablet this good isn't going to be perfect. The biggest problem is the RAM. The 9.7-inch Redmi Pad 2 is limited to just 4 GB, so it's fine when you're doing one thing at a time, but start jumping between a bunch of browser tabs, notes, and apps, and you'll notice the slowdown. Xiaomi does offer memory expansion, but that can't completely replace having more physical RAM. Then there's charging. You get a 7,600 mAh battery with support for up to 18-watt charging. But the included charger can be only 15 watts depending on the market. So this isn't the tablet you'll want to throw on the charger for 10 minutes before heading out. And security is another small compromise. There's no fingerprint scanner. You're relying on AI Face Unlock instead. None of these are deal breakers at this price, but they're exactly the kind of compromises you should know about before handing over your $200. Who should buy it? So, who is the Redmi Pad 2 actually for? If you want a compact tablet for streaming Netflix, browsing the web, reading, taking notes, or checking emails, this makes a lot of sense. The 9.7-inch size is easy to hold, and the 120 Hz display makes everyday use feel much smoother than you'd expect from a tablet around $200. It's also a great option if you travel frequently. With the 4G version, You can pop in a SIM card and stay connected without hunting for Wi-Fi, while GPS makes it more useful on the go. But I wouldn't recommend it for serious gaming or heavy multitasking. That 4 GB RAM limit and mid-range processor simply aren't designed for demanding workloads. So if you want portability, a smooth display, streaming, reading, and everyday tasks, the Redmi Pad 2 is a strong budget pick. If performance is your priority, there are better options. So after everything, is the Redmi Pad 2 actually worth buying? For around $200, the answer is surprisingly easy if you know what you want. The 9.7-inch model gives you a sharp 2K display, a smooth 120 Hz refresh rate, a 7,600 mAh battery, and even an optional 4G connection. It's compact, lightweight, and built for the everyday stuff most people actually do on a tablet. But the 4 GB RAM limit, slow 18-watt charging, and mid-range performance mean this isn't the tablet for serious gaming or heavy multitasking. If you want something small, smooth, portable, and affordable, the Redmi Pad 2 is one of the more interesting budget tablets you can get right now. But if you want maximum performance, more RAM, or a larger screen, I'd spend a little more and look elsewhere. So, bargain or regret? For the right buyer, this is definitely a bargain. So, is the Redmi Pad 2 really worth the hype? For around $200, it's hard to ignore what you're getting. A 9.7-inch 2K 120 Hz display, a 7,600 mAh battery, expandable storage, and optional 4G connectivity in a lightweight body. It's not a gaming powerhouse, and that 4 GB RAM limit can hold it back when you start pushing it hard. But for streaming, reading, browsing, travel, and everyday use, this little tablet punches way above its price. So now I want to hear from you. Would you buy the Redmi Pad 2 for $200, or spend more on an iPad or Lenovo instead? Let me know in the comments, and if you found this video useful, hit that like button and subscribe for more tech worth your money.